Welcome back to the Morning Blend. Our next guest researches suicide. He is an internationally recognized person for his work. He's also an author and professor of psychology. Today he's going to tell you the best way to save your life or the life of someone you love.
Please welcome Dr. Thomas Joyner and Deeatra Kajfosz, the executive director of Life of Hope and the group dedicated to reducing suicide attempts and deaths by suicide. Obviously, this is an incredibly important issue to talk about all the time, but boy, is it top of mind right now. Let's talk a little bit, first of all, about Life of Hope and why it's so important that we are drawing so much attention right now to saving lives.
Well, Life of Hope is a nonprofit organization operating out of Washington County, but we serve really southeast Wisconsin and even in some cases beyond. The topic of suicide is one that we see the numbers of attempts and lives lost increasing each year, and we're recognizing that the silence that's been plaguing our society for far too long is contributing to those numbers on the rise.
And your group works with awareness, education, the reduction of stigma related to mental illness and suicide attempts, but ultimately to train people on how to recognize when someone is suicidal and hopefully intervene, and you even do training for that.
We do, and in fact, we work through 3 different pillars of influence, as you stated. The awareness and the education. We do a lot of work specifically in the support area of individuals who are struggling with thoughts of suicide, as well as working with their families, recognizing that they have their own sense of mental pain that they undergo while they watch somebody struggling. And so we really serve the broader community on that awareness, then get down to the education so that people understand what they can do for themselves, for a loved one, for the intervention, and then specifically with those who are struggling most closely with the topic.
Dr. Joyner, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but that maybe over the past several decades, suicide has been oversimplified. I think there's so much that contributes to the process leading up to, obviously, that final decision. Talk about how you got into researching suicide specifically and what you found.
Well, each tragedy is different from the next. Each suicidal tragedy is different from the next. They're complicated stories, but there are commonalities that can be identified, and that's what I've devoted my professional life to, is trying to find the commonalities that all people who die by suicide share so that we could use those as leverage points to try to intervene.
And the title of one of your books is Why People Die by Suicide. Why do people die by suicide?
It's those commonalities that I was referring to. There are 3 of them, I believe. One is that you conclude that your death will be worth more than your life to other people. And it doesn't matter if that's a misperception. The person really feels it in their heart of hearts that it's true. It applies to them. That's number 1. Number 2 is that you feel hopelessly cut off from others, alienated, lonely. If you have those 2 factors, then you develop a desire for suicide. But the 3rd factor is the most surprising, perhaps. And it's based on the idea that even if you desperately wish to die, it's very, very difficult to do it because death is just not something that's in our nature to easily enact. And so the only ones who are able to act on those desires are people who have developed a fearlessness of physical ordeal. And when those 3 things come together, you feel like you're a burden, you feel alienated, and you feel fearless about death, pain, and injury, and the like. When those 3 things come together, that's when we see these disasters.
So is it true that this is happening more and more among young people, or is that just something that we're kind of being fed in the public media right now?
It's more a media misperception, actually. It does occur in young people. There's no question about that. And when it does, it's a tragedy. And naturally, people want to hear about that and have feeling for that. But it obscures the fact that this is a phenomenon largely of the last half of life. 50 plus. Is the risk, is the age demographic that's most at risk. By far, the numbers of suicides in that age group dwarf the numbers in young people.
It just seems like, I didn't know that, but it definitely seems as if the young suicide, that gets more attention, and probably understandably so. And there's this TV series that all young people seem to be watching these days, and if they haven't watched it, they've heard about it, and it's 13 Reasons Why. You've actually seen it, right?
I have. I've seen all 13 episodes, and you know, I see it as something that can be very positive if we look for the opportunity to simply to bring up the discussion and talk not only with our youth but with one another of the adult age spectrum. It at least brings it out of the darkness. There's some graphic content that is there that is a little concerning, especially from those who are working within the field of prevention. But I think that if we can look at the fact that our youth have a curiosity, and then we can use that as a platform for discussion with parents and with teachers and with others that have a leadership role, we could actually see that this could, in fact, have the possibility of being positive.
This is for both of you then, over the course of your work. What do we do? I mean, for those of us who are not in the throes of finding ourselves in that place, how do we recognize it in somebody else? It seems like it'd be very difficult because there's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of things that tend to eventually lead to that place.
Well, there are a few factors that I think are well understood warning signs, and they're not the typical ones that may occur to you. I've already mentioned things like feeling like you're hopelessly alienated and like you're a burden on others and that you're unafraid of death. But in addition to those, insomnia is a very clear warning sign for suicidal behavior, frequent nightmares, feeling much more on edge and agitated than usual, and then, as I've mentioned, feeling cut off and socially withdrawing from all different activities that the person used to engage in. When you see those factors co-occur in the same individual, that's reason for concern. And what you do about that, I think, is to reach out to health professionals, reach out to crisis lines. In our country, we've got a great one, 1-800-273-TALK is there, and it's available for everyone. It's a really high quality resource.
Where you're going to get a trained individual on the other line.
Exactly, trained and compassionate. They're actually trained to be compassionate and trained to know what to do. So the quality is very good at 1-800-273-TALK. I'm really encouraged by organizations like Deeatra's, Life of Hope. The grassroots in local communities, I think, is going to be a way forward on this, and I find that very encouraging.
Because you can, is your message, you can stop an attempt or a death by suicide if you connect someone with the right resources?
Absolutely, there's no doubt. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it, in fact, sometimes it's very difficult to do, but I am saying that in every single case, it's possible.
It's great information. Great to talk to both of you. Very important. And you have a free forum that's happening tonight, brought to you by Life of Hope. It's a suicide prevention education forum. It's free. It's tonight, 7 o'clock. First come, first serve, because seating is limited. It's at West Bend High School Auditorium. You can find out more by going to lifeofhopeproject.org. Great to see both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.